Well, good afternoon. Good afternoon and welcome. Welcome to another of our Managing Your Small Business Through the Pandemic webinar. This is number 60, episode number 60. And it's great to be back with you for each of these last 60 weeks. I'm Kelly Bearden. I'll be your host and moderator for today. I've got a great special guest that we'll be talking a lot about. A lot of breaking news that's happening, and actually, I am up in our Inyo and Mono counties, the Eastern Sierra, graciously hosted today by Visit Mammoth and the Mammoth Lakes Chamber of Commerce. First time up here in 16 months, trying to do some work in essential business, as I call it, in the two of our three counties that we do business in, as you know. So it's great to be up here and assisting rural businesses with a lot of the issues that are going on. And let's get going. We got a lot to go over today, and we got a great speaker, so let's get working. So as you know, the Central California region is 14 counties across Central California, Pacific Ocean of the state of Nevada. We're located in, our office is located in Bakersfield, and you've seen many of our webinars hosted from our office, from our home office, and it's one of the few times we've been able to get out on the road. So things may be getting closer to normal. So in addition to Kern County, we provide consulting and training and other services in Inyo and Mono counties. We have 5 other centers throughout the region that provide the same great services, SBD services that are confidential and free, including centers in Clovis, Merced, Modesto, Salinas, and San Luis Obispo. Contact your local SBDC if you have any needs today. So here are our sponsors for Webinar Wednesday. Thank you very much, County of Kern, Kern County, California, the Mid-State Development Corporation, CSUB, California State University, Bakersfield School of Public Administration, and also the Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development, along with, of course, being a resource partner of your U.S. Small Business Administration. Thank you all for your contributions in helping us provide this information to small businesses. So one last note is the CSUB Vaccination Hub is going to be closing on May 14th. As you know, you need to probably go to myturn.ca.gov. Of course, they're free. Long hours are open. Everybody over 16 is accepted. Presently, I believe they are administering the Pfizer vaccine. So May 14th will be the last time as far as closing that particular hub. I think the County of Kern has got a different strategy and is going to basically take vaccinations to the people. And instead of having a site where you come and visit our beautiful campus at CSUB, instead there are going to be numerous locations where people can go get a vaccine. So while we're on that note, we have a little breaking news. So, you know, today, if you have questions, please go to the Q&A box. Put your questions in the Q&A. We will get them there. Our producer, Maureen Busher-Dang, will be adding stuff in the chat. You can gladly pull that stuff out of the chat and use it, and also provide you with a copy of this recording of this webinar, and also the links and resources to help you in your business. But there is breaking news this morning, and it broke loud and it broke hard. And the breaking news is that the PPP 2021 funding has been exhausted. And this comes after, you know, I was having a slide that says there's about $26 billion left. It has been exhausted for all sources except for small, you know, business filers that file a Schedule C. And generally, these are the institutions that apply through a community development financial institution, what we call a CDFI, or also there are mission-driven or mission-based community banks that are accepting applications still. So what does all this mean? It means that fintechs, your banks, your credit unions, others are no longer accepting PPP. There is only funding for small businesses that are kind of in that underserved category. And by underserved, we go with that same meaning that we've used in the Restaurant Revitalization Program, and potentially other programs as well, such as Rural-based businesses can still apply. Veteran businesses, women businesses, people of color and other ethnic groups can also apply. So there's still an opportunity to apply. That's the good news for those funds that are still available for this very limited group. But the problem is, after I heard this news early this or mid-morning, I started calling my CDFIs that I knew of and have worked with, many of those such as Access Plus Capital, the Opportunity Fund, CDC Small Business, which is based out of San Diego. None of those three are accepting applications. To this point, the only resource, and these are going to be extremely hard institutions, CDFIs, to find right now. We are going to continue to look and to continue to dig to try to find one. Up here in Mono County yesterday, I went door to door telling people, rural businesses, that PPP is still available. And had 5 or 6 of them that were jumping in to apply this morning. So, boy, tough timing on this for exhausting the funds for PPP 2021. And really not enough time for us to get all of our small businesses that fit that underserved category that I talked about, getting those people funding for the program. And many of these people I talked with yesterday, they're small businesses that didn't have a lot of taxable income in 2019, and they were told their PPP would be very small until the rule changed, allowing them to use line 7 of their Schedule C on their 1040 packet of their tax return, which was for gross income rather than net income that we have talked about exhaustingly over the last several weeks. So hopefully you got your PPP funding. We will continue to look for CDFIs, and a shout out to my colleague, Richard T. Mostert, who has been working also out of the Fresno SBDC tirelessly to try to find some of these that are open. There is an institution in the central and northern part of the San Joaquin Valley, I believe it's Pacific State Bank, and they are a mission-based community bank and are still accepting applications. However, at this time, they're only accepting them from people that have an account with them. So you need an existing banking relationship in order to apply through them. I believe I got that institution correct. If not, throw it in the chat. And that's breaking news. It kind of broke up this morning for darn sure. So let's get on with what else we have. There's our breaking news. And what's new? May 5th. Well, it's Cinco de Mayo. Isn't that nice? It's what I like to call now Taco Wednesday. So happy Cinco de Mayo to everybody who is going to be out there and using this as a wonderful holiday. We do have the breaking news we discussed. We have the Restaurant Revitalization Fund portal open, and we'll be working toward that particular portal and kind of some of the observations that we've seen. It's been pretty smooth so far. We have had some people that have been bounced out. One of the issues that we have seen and has been reported to us is that SBA, being a small agency, has a third party that is actually doing the verification. So there's a third party out there. I believe the company is called LexisNexis. And what they do is they verify for SBA that your business is actually in existence. As you recall, some of the problems we had earlier were with fictitious businesses that were not really established fraudulently collecting those funds, and that has been one of the issues. So other than that, it seems like a pretty simple portal, pretty straightforward. So we'll talk a little bit about the Restaurant Revitalization Fund and go over some of that. We will be talking briefly right now about reopening, continuing toward a full June opening. Numbers, we have orange all throughout Kern, Inyo, and Mono. So we're seeing businesses, many of them being able to be open and exceed and actually meet 50% of their capacity. So going toward a full opening of the economy in June 15th and kind of moving beyond the pandemic is kind of going to be a theme kind of over the next few months. or weeks. Shuttered's venue grant is open. Pretty quiet. I only know of a handful of individuals who are applying for this, but the portal is open and they're still accepting applications. So briefly, we'll chat on that a little bit. We got a special guest, Jim Thomsen, who I like to call the most fascinating man I've met in the last 10 years. Entrepreneurial, if you saw the sketch at the beginning, his titles I had for him: serial entrepreneur, founder, CEO of large outdoor recreation companies. Really worth a listen. Trying to carve out a little more time for him today as well. But Jim Thomsen will join us in a little bit. The Earned Retention Tax Credit, the Employee Retention Tax Credit for 2020 is open for the fourth quarter. 2021 is open. Also, some EIDL, we've talked a little bit about, or a lot about EIDL the last couple of weeks, some of the EIDL changes. The California Relief Grant Program ended yesterday. If you got in the last sixth and final round, there'll be notifications starting to go out May 7th. They're still sending notifications out for those that have been accepted and are receiving awards that were waitlisted from actually periods 1 through 5. So if you applied back on December 30th, talked to somebody yesterday, applied December 30th, found out a few days ago that they had actually gone off the wait list and onto the funded list. So also we'll have your questions, put them in there, and also a poll today. So let's jump into the poll and launch the first questions. And a lot of these are going to be kind of like, where do we go from here? PPP's over. We're going to be moving through the restaurant thing. So what we want to do is we want to know what's on your mind as a business owner. What is on your mind? And launching this first poll, our question is, as you begin to move beyond the pandemic, what do you see as your biggest challenge? Is it bringing customers back? Is it sourcing product and materials? Is it employee hiring or retraining, or is it maintaining a safe workplace? Now, it could have been other too, but other's not an option in this poll. But as you move beyond the pandemic, what do you see as your biggest challenge? Customers, products, materials, employees, or keeping a workplace safe so we don't relapse? And we have half of you voted, 50%. Thank you for jumping in. And give you another minute or so, or actually a moment or so. And I know I'm talking fast today, but a lot to go over. Let's end this poll with 53% of you voting. We'll share the poll results, and it's actually the employee side of things, hiring or retraining. My guess was it was going to be the second choice, which is bringing customers back, 29%. But also a number of you that are having problems, along with Ford Motor Company, in sourcing materials and raw materials and products for your business, and 15% maintaining a safe workplace. So pretty good distribution, pretty wide selection there, and pretty evenly matched. So let's go to our second poll. And our second poll is going to be, my biggest need moving beyond the pandemic is more funding, financial resources, marketing, social media help, HR assistance, record keeping on pandemic relief funds. I need a really good plan, maybe a business plan or something other. So your business need, what is your biggest business need as we move beyond the pandemic? And let's jump in right now and see that about 40% of you have voted. Only one choice on this one. And we're up to 50%. So what we're going to do is we're going to end this poll and share the results with you. And ta-da! Funding and financing resources remain for 51% of you the biggest need moving beyond the pandemic. Marketing and social media help, 22%. 11% human resource assistance, 8% you need a really good plan, record keeping on pandemic relief funds, 5% and 3% other. So thank you again for participating. And a bonus poll, our third and final poll. As Webinar Wednesday moves on beyond a focus, and this can be multiple choice. What are some of the training topics you would like to see? Record keeping ideas and tips for grants, small business experts and trends, economic data on where the economy is going, more funding or more funds for starting and growing a business, and also some of the current topics, what's currently affecting small business. So again, you get multiple choices on this one as we move on. Do you want some record keeping ideas and tips for these multiple funds that you might have accessed? Some small business experts and trends that are happening in small business, economic data, maybe an economist or two, maybe some of those fine economists from CSUB, current topics, or more funding. Okay, we got 53% of you in. We're going to end the poll, share the final poll results with you. And again, it's more funding or starting your small business, more funds for starting or growing your small business or getting you through the pandemic. 53%, coming in at 35% was both current topics and also economic information and data and finding out what's going on with the economy. Are we going to really have this inflation they're starting to talk about? We'll know. 29% of you say record keeping ideas, tips, and grants, and 26 small business experts and trends and what's going on in small businesses. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you again for that. And as you can see with the breaking news, PPP first draw is no longer open. Second draw is no longer open. Those are both closed. But for venues and grants, the Shuttered venues grants, the portal's open. Restaurant Revitalization Fund, as we mentioned, opened on Monday. A lot going on there. Really need to get in. I can't stress enough how critical it is to get in as soon as possible on that. It is basically a first come, first serve program. And again, the first 21 days are reserved for underserved groups. So if you're outside of that underserved group, the money is going to probably start going fast after that 21 days. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Mentioned that the ERTC is open for the fourth quarter and it'll be open for the first half of this year ending June 30th. The EIDL loan is open, and also a lot of other things going on with the EIDL advance and the supplemental EIDL that we've been talking a little bit about. City of Bakersfield Restart Loan to Grant Program is open. And we're going to probably start moving into PPP forgiveness now that PPP2 is closed. Start talking really about the PPP1 for the 40% of you that have not filed for forgiveness yet. It's probably time to turn the page and add attention to that. The California Relief Grant period, as we mentioned, ended, and other programs. So here's what I was prepared to share with you was that, gee, look at that. Of the $284 billion, 258 was available as of Sunday. Now we've talked about these error codes and these in the system that hadn't counted. I have to think that was a big part of it, a big part of how we went from 258 on Sunday to 280, almost 284 on Wednesday. But again, a limited amount of funds are available for those that can go through a CDFI or other institution. Banks, credit unions, unless they fall into that category of community bank, community-driven, mission-driven, you're out of luck. But look at the average really dropped, $45,000. We really started seeing the smaller loans being made for the people that really didn't get into the first program. Recall the first PPP, the 2020 version, the average was slightly under 100,000. So we really saw that over the last few weeks, with last week's average loan size down to 19,000 and about 10 billion being loaned during the last week. So not much to talk about as far as these sole prop opportunities. unless you can find one of those, but there are still potential. We're going to continue to resource and look, and we'll send out information if we have any. If you are still trying to get into a PPP sole prop and you've just been denied, either add something to the chat, or the chat, which will come to the panelists, will come to just us, select us, and we will try to help you after this, because we're going to continue to look and source for lenders that might still be working in our particular space that we need. So getting on with the Restaurant Revitalization Program, let's go through it real quick. We do have a program coming up in our Central California SBDC region, and we'll have SBA's own Victor Bravisca. And Victor will be doing a restaurant revitalization program in Spanish. So that's a great resource if you know of somebody. It's coming up on May the 11th at 9 a.m. So we'll have that resource that's put out to you. So if you know of anybody who would prefer to hear this and get this in Spanish, this would be an excellent opportunity to hear it from Victor. So just going through quickly, the eligibility is quite wide. Restaurants, food stands, trucks, carts, bakeries, alcohols, establishments, and inns. So those are the ones that are eligible. So again, and as of March 13th, you own or operate more than 20 locations, you're not eligible. State, local government, no, sorry. Publicly traded, not today. Nonprofit organization, I don't think so, Tim. And you have to be eligible for at least $1,000. Also, you cannot have an application for the Shuttered Venue Operator Grant Program open. So a number of different entities, you can go with C, S Corps, partnerships, etc. So a legalized legal entity that your firm is really isn't going to be a huge difference. If you're a franchise, there are some hoops you have to jump through with the franchise registry through SBA. So follow those lines, or you can email me for more information. As far as bankruptcy, if you have not permanently closed, filed a Chapter 7 liquidation bankruptcy, or either filed a Chapter 7, 11, and 12, but you have not had an approved plan through the bankruptcy court, those would make you ineligible. Other instances where you have a plan and you are reorganizing and you are meeting all the progress requirements, you will be eligible. Also, if you're a permanent business, if your business is permanently closed, now if you've closed during the length of the pandemic and you're reopening, that is not a permanently closed business. I obviously fixed this slide for future reference, but so other thing is you have to do an attestation by the applicant, and of course do that certification that is very common with most pandemic relief programs, that current economic uncertainty makes the funding request necessary to support ongoing or anticipated operations. So you will sign your John Henry to that. One of the things that we should spend a little bit of time going over are what are the eligible uses for restaurant revitalization funds. And that includes a variety of different business expenses. You see them right there. Some of the ones that are unique that are, I think, that are really nice are the covered supplier costs. And you can get into business supplies as far as cleaning and other things. Again, construction costs are going to be limited to construction of outdoor seating. And also, please remember, expansion costs are ineligible. This isn't to grow your business, it's to help your business that has been impacted over the last, say, 13 months or so. So also the business debt that you have, you see that business debt, both debt service and principal and interest is included, and also payments for rents and other obligations. So there's a wide period on when these funds can be incurred and when you can spend these funds. So they go back to February 15th, 2020, about a month before, as one person told me, all hell broke loose, until March the 11th, 2023. So a rather wide period of a little over 3 years in which these funds can be utilized for. So you can go both back and forward, but you have to make sure that if you do not spend them on eligible expenses that we went through, that the money must go back to the US government. And I have had a few questions. I believe we had one last week thinking that the person wasn't going to need all the money. Well, it still apply. And if you get it, use what you can or use what helps you get through the pandemic. You can always give the additional funds back. So when do you have to use the funds? And there's pretty much the basis there. You will need to provide a detailed expenditure report and certify that the funds have been exhausted and you used them for those particular uses. Also, self-reported unaudited data detailing the use of distribution funds through 2023. So a detailed accounting of how you use the funds will need to be used at the end. Some of you are saying, maybe I should have clicked the box on that record keeping for grants and pandemic relief programs. So very easy to calculate if you were in business prior to 2019. It's simply your 2019 sales or gross receipts minus your 2020 gross receipts minus PPP. And that includes PPP 1 and 2. You can actually then use an alternative mode. There's actually 3 ways to calculate this thing. You can annualize it if you started business in 2019. And for 2020, the one really nice thing about this program is that it finally takes into consideration those individuals that had a venture going, but really were unable to start their business because of COVID. So 4 months before you started doing leasehold improvements, you added your furniture and fixtures, you were working toward a grand opening and COVID hit. And all of a sudden you were closed before you were open. You are taken care of in this particular program, or at least you can apply for funds. So, and applying is directly through the SBA platform at restaurants.sba.gov. If you have a point of sale vendor that is participating, you can go directly through your point of sale, or you can use the telephone and use the 844-279-8898. But please note that those applications take longer. A lot of the information that you're going to have to provide is similar to, one of them is the application form 3172. Please complete that and digitally upload that or complete it digitally on the platform. And also you will need to sign off on the IRS form 4506T, which allows the SBA to contact your SBA or your IRS tax files. You'll need to actually also document your gross receipts. So here's a quick synopsis of the calculations and documents that you need. And again, there is a hotline number. And please, if you run into any problems, again, the problem that we saw most frequently or heard most about from some of our friends was that they were having issues at times validating you were in business through their third-party vendor. Now, if that happened and you were in the portal and you were in the application process, your information should be saved and you can go back and complete it. SBA is told that if you went in, because this is a first come, first serve, and they recognize that they were the part of the problem here, or their third-party vendor was simply overwhelmed with requests trying to verify, that you can go back in and you are still reserved. So if you went in Monday afternoon at 1:30 in the afternoon and got kicked out and have not completed that application, if it was because SBA did not or were not able to complete your application because of this third-party vending error, which is really one of the only errors I've been hearing in the system, then you should be fine. because it will go back and it will count you and timestamp you as being in on Monday. So, you know, the best practice is to go in with the documentation and to be ready and to have your information. People are spending only 20 to 30 minutes in the portal when everything is going well. Again, it is going quite smooth. Again, we have the priority groups that are women, veterans, socially and economic disadvantaged group, which is a self-certification process. If you are an entity that has multiple owners, you can add those ownership shares together to come up with at least 51%, and you count as a priority group. Here's your definitions of socially disadvantaged individuals. And again, these will have a priority for the first 21 days that the program is open. So the first $28.6 billion will be earmarked toward these individuals that are socially disadvantaged, and you see the groups, and also economically disadvantaged groups. And there are set-asides for small businesses. And see, this is the set-aside that's still available in PPP2, which is for those small businesses that enter through the CDFIs. But there are also going to be funding set-asides in the RRF, and that is going to be right there. You see it, yes. 500,000 or less in gross receipts with 5 billion set aside. And then you see the other groups that are also set aside. We have EIDL changes that we've talked about, and not going to jump into much of the EIDL changes. Maybe we'll touch on that a little bit more next week. We've been hitting EIDL really hard the last few weeks. If you have a specific EIDL question, put it in there. The new supplemental EIDL will give an additional $5,000 to those that receive the full $10,000 targeted EIDL advance. And you have to have had a 50% loss during an 8-week period. And also the big change is changing it from a 24-month grant from a 6-month grant. You see shuttered venues also priority. I believe they're still in this 90% group. And so a lot going on with shuttered venues. And enough of me. Let's bring in Jim. Our special guest today is Jim Thomsen, who, as I have mentioned, could be called the most fascinating and interesting man I've met in the last 10 years, if not longer. At age 21, as a student at UCLA, he started an outdoor tour guide, started climbing, formed the Wilderness Experience, turned that into one of the largest manufacturers of outdoor equipment, employing hundreds. Dozens of products, and in 1980 he was one of the very first sporting good companies to complete a public stock offering and going public. Jim then transitioned and it's opened a couple of retail Mountaineer stores and a few other things. Jim likes to repot himself. I like the way he refuses that or calls that. Repots himself. He changes about every decade or so what he's doing in life, and then he became a senior vice president and ultimately a CEO. JanSport, a lot of big company names that you see here, the North Face, JanSport, Vans, Timberland, huge names in the outdoor recreation world. Then Jim decided that its 10 years was up and decided after going on a sailboat for maybe 2 weeks that it was time to maybe just spend about 10 years touring the world by a sailboat. 10 years, 50 countries, 50,000 miles. Jim moved back because I guess 10 years were up and back to the Sierra Nevadas, Mammoth Lakes. And Jim really did something fascinating. When I got to meet Jim in 2019, he did a Kickstarter campaign. He did a crowdfunding campaign to bring back one of the original products that he launched back with the Wilderness Experience. Very successful campaign. We'll jump into that campaign in a little bit. But let's bring in Jim. Jim Thomsen, great to have you here, Jim. Let's switch chairs. Thanks for joining us today.
Well, great. Fun to be here. Fun to actually be in person for a change. Well, I think Kelly kind of went through everything I've done. So that sounds like we had a good time with that. And one thing he didn't mention is that a couple of the businesses I started were in the Eastern Sierra. So I've opened my first retail store in Mammoth Lakes in 1980, and then a couple of other stores in the early 90s. So I'm familiar with this area also.
So Jim, how did you first get started in business?
Well, as you kind of mentioned there, I was going to school at UCLA wanting to be an electronic engineer, and I'm excited about computers, but I also got into climbing. So pretty quickly, that sort of took over my life, and we started a guide service. And starting and then 1972, we started manufacturing equipment. And that was a hard time. When I look at the issues we have today starting businesses, they're really big. But at that time, inflation was, I don't remember the number, over 10%. Interest rates from banks were around 14 to 15% for loans. So it was a very, very hard time to do a business. And also in those days, there was no overseas sourcing. So to manufacture equipment, you had to buy a sewing machine and learn how to sew and then hire people to do it. So it was a super way to get a little bit of everything. We had our first computers, in those days, IBM came out with the first time with a small computer for small businesses. And it was a super exciting time, and turned out to be very, very successful.
Well, Jim, I did mention the Kickstarter campaign, and I pulled it up here. And the Kickstarter campaign goes back to 2019, when a mutual friend of ours here in Mammoth Lakes introduced me to you and just said, hey, do you know, we were getting ready for our 2019 Eastern Sierra Capital Summit. And we were looking for somebody who had done a Kickstarter campaign or done some crowdfunding as another form to get into, another way to raise funding and get into business. And that's when I met Jim. And since then, Jim has gone on to join us as an SBDC consultant. He's worked with over 60 businesses during the pandemic, getting them millions of dollars in pandemic relief in both Inyo and Mono County, all the way up from Lake Topaz down to Lone Pine. And it's just been a great source. So it's been great for the Eastern Sierra to have Jim on board. And it all goes back to this product right here, the original Clutter Sack. Jim, tell us about this.
Well, that was a pack that we did in 1974. And at the time, the packs that we were using, but that were used by climbers a lot, were usually coming from Europe. Malay and different Lafuma were companies out of Europe making small packs for people to do climbs that would last, either a long day or a overnight climb. And we sold hundreds of thousands of these. We were the beginning of that style of pack made in the United States. And it worked out really well, and we did a lot. And over the years, it's been copied by so many companies, and even the name has been copied by lots of companies. And about 2017 or so, we had a party for people that used to work for the company. It was sort of a reunion party. And we had about 16 people that were employees of the company back in the 70s come to this party. And during it, after a few glasses of wine, we were saying, well, how come, it's really a shame that this company, after we took it public, it went through a lot of owners and other companies bought it, and it's just totally disappeared. So if you're young, you've probably never even heard of it. But in those days, we were equal in sales to the North Face. And we thought it was a shame that it just disappeared. So I looked at it, thought about doing something, and I decided it would be fun to make this pack. But I have no connections with how to sell it or any of that. So we did a Kickstarter program and raised, I don't remember the number now, but in the $60,000 range, and had the pack produced using all materials that were the exact same from 1974, the same fabrics, still metal buckles. It may not be the greatest pack compared to what's made today, but it's definitely exactly like it was. And it was really fun to do it. And we sold almost all of them. And so that was a great way to learn a lot about Kickstarter. And since I'd never had worked with any crowdfunding, I did everything myself because I wanted to learn how you do the video, how you do the advertising of it, how you communicate with the people who do bids to it, and then how you have to, when you actually make it, how you have to distribute it out to all those people. It was a really fun, small, complicated business. And I think it's something that more people should do it. It worked so well. So
Well, originally you went back and you actually sourced the IP because the company, and you know what, it made me think that there's got to be a lot of opportunities like this out there where there's been mergers and consolidations and people really don't care after a while about some of the products and services that were so valuable back in the day.
Yeah.
So you went back and got the trademark.
Right. I went through, the company had gone through, I think it was about 7 or 8 different corporate buyouts of buying it. And the final company that had it owned, it was like, I don't know, 1,000 or 1,500 different trademarks. And they were just letting them expire if they weren't using them anymore. And so I just kind of looked at it. I wasn't willing to spend the money to buy it. And then they didn't renew it in 2017 or so. So I just went on and re-registered it and got the rights to it. And then went out and obtained the trademark for the name in a lot of countries, all of Europe and China and the United States. And so, so I still have those trademarks with no idea what I'm going to do with them now, because I'm not really ready to do another product. But it was something that was not that complicated to do. And again, because a lot of it was a learning process for me, I did a lot of the work on the trademarking, not using expensive attorneys or anything. So I know that you can trademark products pretty inexpensively. Kickstarter, and now, all the other ones are great ways of raising money. So it kind of, reinforced my belief that you could still start companies today.
Yeah, and I really think that there's such an opportunity with crowdfunding, and always have. I mean, it was our first seminar when I took this job in 2012. It was our first webinar in 2013. We had the Queen of Crowdfunding on last summer, and there's just so much opportunity that is still there. And you did this because you were bored, you told me.
Yeah, it was kind of, it was, a fun project that came up, and but it was definitely a part-time thing that I just did. It could have been done a lot better if it was your business.
Well, it was a fine campaign. Looking through it and having you presented at the 2019 Eastern Sierra Capital Summit, got to know it very well, and produced everything, shipped everything out. Everybody was happy. Actually, everybody was elated. It was so oversold.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
So that's great. So Jim, you've been doing a lot of work here in the Eastern Sierra, as I mentioned, over 60 businesses just in the last 13 months. And what are some of the observations and some of the trends that you've seen? Now, the Eastern Sierra is, its main economic activity is going to be tourism and tourism based, which is a lot different from my Kern County base. But up here, you saw a lot of different changes and a lot of changes with those businesses. What are some of the good and bad and ugly that you saw?
Yeah. Well, obviously, when I first started working with the SBDC, that was in March, and nobody had any idea what was going to happen. And so everybody I was talking to were, and I'm sure a lot of you were wondering if they'd even be in business. And that was really hard for me, talking to people who had been working for, 10, 15 years on a business who may lose it. And we had no idea what was going to happen. Luckily, the government programs that came out turned out to be excellent and really did help a lot. So I think the total numbers, not just the ones that I worked with, but for the EIDL loan and the PPP from last year, it was about $80 million for the Eastern Sierra. And so that's a lot of money and it saved a lot of businesses. And it's been fun working through it and seeing, not fun when it's really hard and you saw people having major problems. But as we've had more people coming back into town and now things are opening up, it's great to see that the majority of the people that I worked with are making it and are going to make through it. It's going to be a really hard past year. And it's going to be one they hope never happens again. But it's pretty exciting to see that we're able to, that a lot of people were able to survive through this. Because if you can survive through this last year, it's going to give you a pretty good chance for the future. The other thing that's probably the most fun for me in the last month or two is there's people starting new businesses now. Actually got probably 3 in Bishop and 2 or so in Mammoth that are talking seriously about new businesses. And that's my passion. That part is really exciting. So it's fun to see that people are looking at this, realizing it's, a hard time to start a business, but also realizing that it may be the right time and give you a lot of advantages. There's probably gaps in the market wherever anybody is. So.
Well, a year ago, right to this very day, Jim was scheduled to be the keynote address at our Central California Region Small Business Awards ceremony. And this is historically has been Small Business Week through the U.S. Small Business Week through the U.S. Small Business Administration, and we celebrate it. And it's interesting, I was looking through that program that was, of course, canceled. And then Jim would have been back this year, but instead, we stole him for this webinar. And it was interesting. People that were warming up, Jim, included Isabel Castillas Guzman, who's now the administrator of the U.S. Small Business Administration. I mean, that's a pretty heavyweight for to be warming up for your keynote presentation. But what it did was it really didn't allow us to get together and celebrate small businesses like we have in the past. And that is this week historically, and something that I really miss doing on a region level, where we would usually meet in Fresno, and also our Kern County Small Business Awards that we could do. So hopefully those will be back soon. But their loss for missing out on your keynote is our gain today. So that's great.
I do have to say that I knew from businesses in the past, I had gotten SBA loans and things, but never really worked with a small business development center before. And the resources are amazing. And it's actually I'm probably become somebody really supporting something I didn't know that much about a year ago. The fact that we've got people here that are really experts in social media and website design. There's people that can help with all kinds of accounting and all those things that a lot of people are passionate about their business, and those are the areas they're not passionate about, but they still have to be done. So I have to really say that this has turned out to be a learning experience for me, and the options and the opportunities that are available and for businesses for free. You're not going to get a lot of these consultants for free. So it's a pretty incredible organization, and Kelly has done a great job on it.
I did pay him to say that. And on the flip side of that, Jim is available throughout the entire 14 county region. And obviously Jim has a phenomenal background in outdoor recreation equipment and apparel. And I know he's worked with a few businesses, one on the Central Coast and maybe others, but there's always that opportunity to meet with Jim if you are doing a startup, or if you're in existing businesses and have some ideas from somebody who has been in the outdoor industry for basically 40 years.
Yeah. And, new businesses and being an entrepreneur is my passion. I'm not going to do any more myself. Because I want to play a lot, just most of my time playing. But talking about businesses, one of my best meetings was just last week with a woman that had a whole lot of ideas. And basically, it was just, we sat around, drank coffee, and brainstormed about possible businesses. And for me, that's as much fun as I can have. I love that. So.
Well, Jim, regionally, pandemically, let me go pandemically. I don't know of anybody who has, since I know you have a love of travel, just before the pandemic last year, I remember you checked out for a month or so and went to Patagonia.
Patagonia, yeah.
And came back, and being a traveler, you were denied your travel, obviously, like everybody else from the pandemic. But having an address in Mammoth Lakes, you had a kind of unique perspective, and you would grab a wilderness permit and share when I would have to tell your clients that you were going to be unavailable for a couple of weeks. Share what you do.
Since we couldn't travel, and that's something that my wife and I do a lot of, we just got every wilderness permit that would come available. We'd look at a date, and a lot of times it was places I'd never been and didn't know anything about. But we'd get the permit, and I never even realized that there was a limit on how many wilderness permit nights you could have. But we got 55 nights that we went out backpacking in the Sierra, and that turned out to be the limit that you could actually get. So that was great. That's one of the advantages of living in the Eastern Sierra, is that we could leave. We're not traveling. We were just drive to a trailhead and take off for a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks and spend it in the backcountry. And then, and again, I love this area. When we started having all the fires and the smoke was terrible here, we took off for Nevada and explored areas that I've driven through but never taken the time to explore. And Nevada is an incredible place that is so close to us here. So So yes, it's been a really, really fun time.
And Jim, Maureen Busher-Dang, our producer, shared this photo that you shared with her over your trip to Nevada. And so
Oh,
I
yeah.
guess this was part of your pandemic trip to Nevada. Can you
This
talk
was-
a little about that?
Yeah, this was just maybe 2 weeks ago. Went down with two people who are professional photographers that are run lots of classes and seminars all over the Western United States. And they wanted to scout out some new places for taking pictures of both the Milky Way and sunrises and sunsets. So with their friends, we just went with them. And one of the things I am definitely not good at is getting up at 2:30 in the morning and climbing a big steep trail up through sand and rocks and everything to get to a cave. But I did it, and we had an incredible view of the Milky Way. And this was one of the people I went with, Jeff Sullivan, who went up there and shined a light to kind of light up the entrance of the cave. So if you've ever seen the work by Jeff Sullivan and Lori Hibbett, they're both professional. Their pictures will look way better than mine, but it was sure a fun trip. And we got to explore areas that I've never explored there before. So,
Well, this looks like it'd be a good crowdfunding project. Are there any other crowdfunding projects that you've seen or you're hoping to work on?
there's one where somebody is going to be doing a limited edition a coffee table book, and it'll be a limited number. And the crowdfunding, it's not settled yet, but that's sort of the idea that I think will work really well. It'll be able to sell them all, or the majority of them, in advance to people that are really excited about it. And I think there's a lot of other great opportunities that could be done.
Well, Jim is also, in addition to our outdoor, he's an expert in crowdfunding now, actually having a successful campaign
One, yes.
and a well-ran campaign that worked great. So anything else you want to add, Jim, before we hit that Q&A box?
No, but again, if you want to talk about doing new businesses or moving into new areas or expanding or something, I really do enjoy talking about it, talking about opportunities. And my ideas may not be always right, and most of the time probably will not be right, but at least I'll have a whole lot of them. And if you can pick the ones that might work, maybe it'll help. And it's always fun when you're starting a business to be able to talk to somebody who first has done some and had successes, but also somebody like me who has had failures, and realize that it's hard to start a business, but the good parts of it are really neat. So if you're that style and that's your personality, I'm happy to spend time talking about it.
Well, a great resource for businesses. And Jim will Zoom with you outside, SBDC consultants outside of the Eastern Sierra. Jim, great to have you here. It's always a pleasure. And,
Well, thank you very much.
Can't talk enough about the great work you've done. Okay, so we'll be back next week. You see there's number 61, May 12th. And let's jump into your questions right now that you have. Let me do a little stop share and get blasted with the big photo there, which they only let me do. Okay, questions. Blue Acorn said they were still accepting PPP applications, even though the news already came out. Can I still apply for PPP2? My understanding, Blue Acorn was one of the sources that I hit mid-morning, and they, I believe at 11 o'clock, were saying that they were not accepting new applications. Now, if you've heard something contrary to that, or maybe potentially afterwards, Blue Acorn is a fintech, and I don't know their exact status of if they are anything other than a fintech that then works with a member bank to facilitate that PPP. But my understanding right now is that it is CDFIs, community development financial institutions, and also the mission-based community banks that are doing those. Where do we apply for the Schedule C small business program? And I think you've probably heard the news since the earlier part when you put this in, that as of right now, those CDFIs are our only resources. And honestly, right now, I don't have one. If you would like to know if I find something, because I am going to spend a good part of the remainder of the day trying to find one. Because as I mentioned, I found 5 or 6 clients yesterday that could apply. And sure enough, I say there's great opportunity, and then in the morning it's gone. Do you have to live in Bakersfield to apply for their city program? And the answer is yes, you have to be in the city limits. And the city limits in County of Kern kind of make some strange turns at time. Here's just letting you know that deposit account link has experienced a problem with the link. Was told that an hour ago to keep trying, and they are working on it. So the deposit account link, I believe the deposit account link is in the RRF. I haven't been in the portal itself. I think I know about everything about it, having seen a lot of screenshots, but I didn't want to jump in there, and hopefully 1,000 people across the country that are helping individuals in this particular program didn't jump in either. So if you're having a problem with deposit account link, that they, as of an hour ago, they're working on it. Is there a hotline to call regarding the EIDL advance? I received an email saying I was declined. Okay. But two of the reasons are untrue. Yes, okay, so it sounds like you are applying for the actual EIDL loan rather than the advance. The actual EIDL loan, which has an application process. The EIDL loan program has a portal. Typically with the targeted EIDL advance, the keyword there is targeted because it's SBA that is actually targeting individuals who they know are in a low to moderate or low income area. And then you need to provide information that your sales were down at least 30% over an 8-week period, your gross receipts. And also, again, you have to be in that area, but it's usually generated by SBA. So if you're telling me that you went through an application process, you're probably applying for the EIDL loan. And the EIDL loan does have a reconsideration process. If they've made a mistake of one way or another, there is a way to go through and having your application reconsidered. Oftentimes that is in our chat box. I wouldn't be surprised one bit if Maureen has put that in the chat box. So you can go in there and look to see if you see EIDL, the EIDL toll-free number, or the EIDL reconsideration number. How do we contact Jim? Well, I just kind of turn over to him like this and say, how you doing, Jim? Michael, send me an email, kbearden@csub.edu, and I'll forward that to him, just because I don't want to have to take the time to ask him for his contact information right now. Is the supplemental EIDL advance EIDL automatic? Let me start over with this again. Is the supplemental EIDL, so that would be the targeted EIDL supplemental program, automatic to those who applied for EIDL before it was enacted? You know, the supplemental, and I think I know where you're coming from on this. Maybe you didn't receive a EIDL advance at all, or you received a $10,000 one last year. And now we have the supplemental program that was recently in the last few weeks added by SBA. And again, that is by SBA invitation only. And what they're looking at is they're targeting those that are in census tracts that are in low, moderate. I keep saying low to moderate, but I believe they just go by low. I think they're pretty much low to moderate. It's ironic. I'm sitting right now in Mammoth Lakes, California, which is, in my opinion, not a low income area. And in many of the census tracts around here, it is judged as that. And I can't tell you why. So the census tracts are what they are. And if you are in one of those census tracts, and if you've either applied and received the $10,000 targeted, SBA will be reaching out to you. Okay, where do you find, and apparently you're having a problem sourcing new raw material, and a lot of the milling isn't being done in the South or Northeast. You know, I think it depends industry by industry, but you know, that might be, if you're looking for maybe a raw material for an apparel, that could be maybe even a question for Jim. But really sourcing new fabric in the US is going to probably depend on which fabric it is. If it's, wool or merino wool or cotton or whatever, and would probably need to be specific to your business, send me an email and I will try to help you from there. Okay, regarding the RRF, the Restaurant Revitalization Fund, we open, then close. The open and close can we still apply? Yes, you did not permanently closed. If you permanently closed, meaning you're not going to reopen, and we ran into that issue up here, yesterday in June Lake talking to people, is that they were more seasonal businesses up here and they were never even open for their entire 2020 season because of the pandemic. So if you were even shut down for an entire longer period of time, as long as you did not permanently close that restaurant, yes, you can still apply. And again, I recommend you do it as soon as possible. Okay, do we have to repay any of the targeted advance EIDL? Targeted advance EIDL, you do not have to repay. The EIDL loan needs to be repaid over 30 years at 3.75%. So the EIDL loan, yes. The EIDL advance, if you just got the EIDL advance in 2020, the answer to that is no, you don't have to repay that. If you're eligible for the targeted advance in a low income area, a targeted area, then no, you don't have to repay that. And no, you won't have to repay the supplemental. I received the $1,000 grant and seemed to be eligible for more. Well, that's what this program was for, the targeted EIDL, for those that were in that census tract. And we've had the map several times. The map very well be in our chat box right now. I haven't had the opportunity to jump into chat. So oftentimes and almost always it's in there. If you are in that low income area, then you are potentially eligible. And not going into that chat box, well, let's go into it right now. Let's see what's in the chattery right now. And let's see what we find here. I applied for PPP on Friday and was approved yesterday and received funds this morning. You are one lucky person. I would go buy a lottery ticket, because if you were approved yesterday, you were getting in at the last minute. I would say you're fine if you've received information that you're approved. And the bank is Beneficial State Bank. Thank you, Richard T, for correcting me. I always want to throw Pacific in there for some reason. So again, if you are a customer of Beneficial State Bank, right now, that is the only resource that I know of. And we will be continuing to try to find sources for you. So what in here you'll see resources. You can jump in and grab them. It's the website for the RRF. It's the application portal, the link to the portal. You'll see the telephonic information, the Shuttered Venues Grant website, SVOG. There's a question, are there any funds available for new small businesses, not specifically a restaurant? Well, with PPP closing today, I would say there aren't now, but I'm really optimistic that as we move, that there has really been a lot of energy pushed toward how difficult small business startup loans are. And that is something that we really hope to see change. So stay posted, keep posted, and hopefully there will be more. You know, there are programs, after we get through some of these pandemic, a lot of the individuals that do those, again, are your CDFIs and other entities that do smaller type startup small business loans, and some of those will be available. Okay, Mary suggests that the link has been down since Monday. You have to enter your information manually. And I'm assuming that is for the RRF. And also you've asked that the screen with eligible expenses on the grant be shown again. What I'll do is I'll email you directly that. I believe I have your email to the person that sent that to me, showing, and I have that separated almost out, that one slide, because I've shared that with a couple of groups. There's the EIDL number that's in there now, and the EIDL targeted map is in there as well in the chat. Okay, that wraps up number 60. What a day. You know, you think you're cruising into this thing, and then all of a sudden your $26 billion falls right out of your pocket. And we'll continue to scramble and look. We'd like to see more people really get that PPP. Really for small businesses came around so late and everything like that. We'll keep looking. So thank you to all those out there, including our longer term people that have been on this particular webinar. We'll join you next week again for number 61, back on May 12th. Happy Cinco De Mayo, everybody. And for Jim, actually, I'll let Jim say goodbye himself.
Okay. Well, thanks so much for inviting me, and this has been fun, and I hope to talk to some of you.
There you go. Okay, everybody, have a great day. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye now.